Okay, so here's the sectioning. It works principally with the kind of 4 main panels, I guess. I've got, I guess let's start at the top because that's where I started. So working kind of from the corner of the eyes up to a point along the crown. And at the crown I connected those 2 slightly diagonal partings, so you can see that's a little bit narrower there than it is at the front. So we've got a fuller, broader fringe section and narrower crown area. Hopefully that will make sense as we go through the haircut. So a slightly diagonal shape connected horizontally there. And then using those points, I've just come down to a point just behind the ear. And I've done that the same on both sides there, so quite symmetrical. So this is our major panel for the back. Obviously we have then the sides and the top. So we're going to start in the back, and I'm going to start at centre back to flatten and tuck this shape in. Yeah, so let's start there. So we're going to start at centre back. I'm going to start with a big long section, but I'm not going to try and work that all at once, so we'll try and break that down into some bite-sized pieces. But a vertical section that will allow us to try and control and establish the silhouette. So I'm coming in, I want something that sits in a little bit tighter through the bottom and builds up with a gentle curve up towards some length on the crown through there. So I will start at the top here. Trying to make sure I keep a curve in the cutting line. Bringing this in tighter towards the nape. I'm going to work with another section parallel to that on either side of that centre section. So I'll have 3 sections that are pretty much on base. Come to the side, hopefully you can see the angle quite clearly. And you can, within that angle, you hopefully can see the curve as well. That's quite important. I want this to be quite a soft shape, as I mentioned before. So the curve, that little roundness that we have in our cutting line is really going to help to encourage that. So I'm going to do another section on this side. Just going to step around. This time I want my fingers at the bottom on this right hand side, and I will start cutting at the bottom. So again on base, almost just following the head shape to be honest, but a little bit tighter in at the nape. So those 3 sections should take me out to a point where I'm almost at the round of the head, so almost at the corner of the head here. And what I'm going to do now is start to move my sections from being vertical, so I'm going to get her straight so you can see. I'm going to move from being vertical into being slightly diagonal. And those sections, I'll bring those sections out on a slight diagonal, but then I'm going to pull the section back to make it vertical. So that means I'm going to over direct the bottom of the section. So as I take the section out, I will then over direct the bottom to make my fingers vertical. So I'm going to start to gain length at the bottom of the section, but not at the top. Try trying to find the best position for you to see this. Maybe here. So a slightly diagonal section. I'll bring that section out on base. Bring that out on base with it. It's hopeless, this thing. So let's try and show you on this side. So my slightly diagonal section there, I'm going to pull that section out and then hold it vertically in line with the top of the section. So a little twist in my fingers there. So the top's on base, no change there. But as I work my way down the section, we start to see a little increasing amount of over direction. So I'm still following my guideline. I'm not creating a new guideline. That's simply just over directing through the bottom. I'm going to do that for a couple more sections till I get to behind the ear. So diagonal section, pulled out and then held vertically. So I'm going to over direct the bottom but not the top. So the theory of this, I guess, is quite simple. It does take a little bit of practice though. And I know one or two of you have already done this technique with me perhaps. I remember doing it just a few weeks ago in Paris. And it is a little bit complicated, to tell you the truth. It's not the easiest thing initially to understand, but a little practice and it comes together quite quickly. But the reason I'm doing this is because I do want additional length behind the ear, but what I don't want is additional weight. So if I over direct everything, I'm going to get a lot of bulk behind the ear. So I'll get the length for sure, which is great, but I'll get a lot of weight with it, and I don't want the weight. I just want the length. So by using this technique, I can keep the same length at the top of the section, so thereby not increasing the mass, but by over directing the bottom, I'll get the length but without the weight. And that's very helpful in filling out this area behind the ear. So diagonal section held vertically. There we go, and then that's given me that little bit of additional length just behind the ear there, which is what we want. So I'll do the same on the other side, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about the cross-check afterwards. Okay, so with both sides cut, I'm going to cross-check now. And because of the over directions I've used, you imagine if we pulled everything back square, we'd have a very flat and square expanded shape. And if we followed the head shape, we'd have a very round shape. And so we've got both of those in this to cross-check. So what we should see is something very flat and square at the bottom, and then as we move up the shape will become more and more rounded, more to the head shape, where we haven't over-directed the hair. So that's what I'm looking for, square at the bottom, and then rounded at the top. So that's great. Here we have our squareness, nice and flat through the bottom. And as I travel up the head, that squareness should soften and become more and more rounded. So by the time we're at the top, where we haven't over-directed the hair, we should just have a head shape. Okay, that looks all right on that side. Let's do the other side. Same thing, that's what we're looking for. Good to understand what the shape should be. I have a clean one in my pocket. Okay, so that's the back panel, the basic shape in there. So we've got the same length running all the way through the top, additional length through the bottom. I'm going to now utilise that that kind of a shape as we work in to the sides. So the reason I've disconnected the sides is I want to be able to control this a little bit more accurately. You don't have to. We could connect this, we could continue with that technique I've just been using, and that would certainly give us more or less a similar length as we have in the sides. Or if you wanted to, and this is why I've disconnected, if you wanted to create a different length, you can do that here. It's a good opportunity to find a different length. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to connect with the previous panel. So I'm going to use the top of the previous panel as a guide, but then change my angle. So I'm working through into much more length. So it will connect at the top, but not at the bottom. So a different angle entirely now. I'm elevating up quite strongly. Not sure you can see that so well, so I'm going to stand. I'm going to just turn. Which way can I work? Maybe I'm going to work this way here. So connecting at the top there, but not at the bottom of the section. Not sure that's much clearer. Let's take another section. So as I elevate this hair up, on base now, I don't need to over direct anymore because I'm creating a new line, a new length. So I'm just working on base with my new angle, which is much more layered now. Same length at the top, connects at the top, but a different length at the bottom. Now it may be that I don't want all this length at the bottom. So what I might need to do is come through and just rebalance that angle, reassess exactly the length I want to see, and maybe just drop the angle to reduce the length on the perimeter. final section at the front. Again, no over direction. Everything on base. And I'm actually lifting everything up almost directly upwards so I can create this super layered length. And that's obviously giving me lots of length now in the side, in the perimeter. As I say, we can adjust that now. We can maybe change the angle if we wanted to, if you needed to, or we can do that when it's dry. I'm going to leave that for now, see how it works. I probably don't want all that length, but I know I can make that adjustment later, so I'm going to do that later. So I'll do exactly the same thing on the other side, taking my guide from the top of my last section there, connecting here, and then working out with a new guide into length. Okay, so with both sides cut, I need to cross-check the sides as well. So I'm going to come through now with horizontal sections, and I know I've lifted everything up to pretty much horizontal, so I can lift everything up this way, starting from the top, and check with a very simple line. Obviously it connects into that length at the back, and because I worked everything up just straight up to the ceiling, it's a very easy and fast cross check. Everything follows suit, everything's elevated up and checked into that top line. Okay, so that's the base shape done for both the sides and the back. And with that in place, we can start to think about the top. So the top, I'm going to work from the crown, and we're going to work shorter to longer. And I'm going to use a slightly pivoting section, more like a rotating section, I call it, because we're not pivoting. Pivoting is from one fixed point. But here, because the section is wider at the back and deeper at the front, we're just going to allow the sections to rotate a little bit as they come over the top. And in terms of elevation, I'm going to start in the centre, and then as I come through, I will allow the sections to lean out a little bit, so we get a little bit of roundness in the top. So when that section falls down, it will fall under, it won't want to kick out. So that's quite important, that a little bit of roundness in here, just as we have in the back, to allow those lengths to roll under. Okay? So I'm going to start in the centre. Obviously that's the highest point on the head, so that means that this section will be the shortest section through the panel. And here I could connect on the crown. Maybe we will, I think. Use that as a little guide through there. So we'll connect at the crown, and then we'll work out to a slightly longer length as we come through towards the front. Now obviously you can change this angle as much as you want to. You know, if you want less length, more length, you're going to use your angle to control the length that you get at the front and the subsequent texture obviously that you get, because the length is a big influence on the texture. If we want more texture, we can't have the hair too short, so we're going to have to go down a little bit shorter. We are going to point into the whole of the shape once it's dried, but for now just really trying to focus on the structure. So again, connecting at the crown. And working out to a little bit more length as we come through into the front. Rotating those sections over. So we have a slight pivot. And leaning out very, very slightly with the section. So not going strictly up to the ceiling, just leaning out so we get that little bit of roundness. Not too much, but a little bit through that top panel. Okay, so that's one side done. I'm going to work the other side and then we'll do a little cross check before we blow dry. So let's move on to the cross-checking. Obviously we work vertically with those sections through the top, so we'll be working horizontally with the cross-check. And I'm looking just for that little bit of roundness that we were talking about before. So a soft little rounded shape. So when those lengths come down, they are going to roll under or roll in to the lengths in the side and make a smaller shape. What I don't want them to do is kind of kick out. If I wanted them to kick out, I would have made them very flat and square instead, and that would have encouraged the ends to push out a little bit. Okay, so with the basic shape done, I'm going to move through into blow drying now. So blow dry the whole shape. Keep it nice and flat. Obviously it's on a mannequin, so I've got all this kind of crazy root lift and it's very dense on the edges. So I'm going to be working hard to keep that nice and flat, to keep it a nice small shape, which it's designed to be. And then we can do some pointing. Okay. So with the blow drying and the ironing in place, I can start to point. I use some primer. It's the best prep product I find for any blow dry. I decided not to put another product on top of that because I want to keep the hair quite light. I'm going to use another product for styling it in the ultimate finishing. So I don't want to overburden the hair with product. But I also used a little bit of Silk Smooth just before I ironed, just to hydrate the hair and lock in a little bit of moisture. It's very light, so it doesn't overburden the hair. So that was fine. So I'm going to work through all those panels now, those 4 panels, the back, the 2 side panels and the top, and I'm going to use a pointing technique. I went through that with you on the last haircut, so I'm not going to go into too much depth about that. If you need more information, you can always refer back to that. But I'm going to use horizontal sections, work through the shape as systematically as I could possibly make it. I'm going to remove perhaps 30-40% of the weight from the last 30-40% of the length. So nice and systematically, taking care not to pick up the same section twice, working directly into those lengths. So work all the way through the shape, and then I'll pick back up with you when we get to working on the outlines. Okay. Okay, so that's all the pointing done. I'm going to come through now and have a little look at the outlines. Obviously the outlines are a very personal thing, and we're going to tailor those to the face ordinarily. The features aren't so dynamic on a mannequin, so it's a little bit hard to kind of talk about suitability, I always find. But still, I'm going to try and work a shape that does work to some of the points on the face, on the mannequin. So I'm picking out here where the back of the jaw is, the corner of the jaw. It's very soft, obviously, here. But I'm going to use that as a little sort of reference point. And all that length that we gained in that first panel here, that little bit of length that we've got, is exactly where we want it. That's the whole point of doing that technique in the back, is so I can incorporate a little bit of length here. So I'm not removing too much initially, but then as I come through into the nape, we'll take this a little bit tighter, but very, very soft as well. So in the same way that I used my scissors when I was pointing to remove weight, I'm using them in a very similar manner here now. I'm working on the outline. So rather than cutting across, it might be faster to do that, but it gives you a very kind of heavy, probably too much of a chunky texture. And I don't want that. I do want that softness. So I'll take a little bit more time, go in a few more times to push the length up. So trying to keep my scissors in line with the hair, so I get this very soft perimeter shape. Okay, and then as we come into the side, I can use that as a little bit of a reference point here for my perimeter length in the side. So as I said to you, I am going to lose some of that long length. And I have to say, typically, on a real person, we wouldn't get quite so much density in the perimeter because the hairline's much lighter, but obviously on a mannequin, it's a little bit more dense and a little bit more kind of defined because of the injections, but that's okay. We're just working with that. So all I'm saying is you probably find this a little bit of an easier process on a real person than you will do on a mannequin, because the mannequin's got those very heavy areas on the hairline where on a human would be much lighter. Okay, so keeping that nice and soft and light through there, kind of working to that corner of the jaw. I'm going to do the same on the other side, and then I'll catch up with you when we come to the temples and the fringe area. Okay then, so our last product is some Reshape. Nice dry paste. Taking a little in my finger there. I'll just mix that up in my hand. As I say, it's nice and dry, so not too sticky at all. I'm going to work that all through the hair. I think it's important when we're talking about product that we get an even distribution of the product everywhere, so we get a consistency with the behaviour in the hair. And that's going to add a little bit of separation, definition and malleability to the hair, so we can do a multitude of different things in terms of the way that we dress the shape. Okay, so I hope you like it. That's our little technique using some elements of disconnection and connection, all kind of centered around that crown, I guess. And then the main technique here that adds the width in the back is that little use of over direction on a diagonal section just through the bottom there, so we get this length and width to the shape whilst maintaining that nice small internal structure. Okay, so I hope you like that, and I will see you next time. Okay, all the best, bye.